He had her face pressed into the hood of our truck when I stepped outside. Her hands were behind her back, wrists pinched tight in plastic zip ties. The officer was barking something about resisting, while Karen stood a few feet away, clutching a manila folder like it was the Constitution. "That's her!" Karen shouted. "She owes over $4,000 in unpaid fines. She's violent. She threatened me." My wife, Laura, didn't say a word. She just looked at me, calm, focused. The same look she had the day she walked away from her federal job and said, "I'm done cleaning up other people's messes." "Sir, step back," the officer snapped at me. He was young, nervous. Sweat was already gathering under his collar. He had no idea what he was walking into. I raised both hands. "You sure you know who you just zip-tied?" He blinked. "What?" Laura turned her head slightly, voice low. "Officer Ramirez, 2 years ago, federal swearing-in ceremony. I signed your appointment papers." He froze, just for a second, but enough to crack the moment. Karen stepped in. "Don't listen to her. She's making it up. She lives here under false pretenses. I've sent 4 certified letters." "Let me back up. You know how you move into a place hoping for peace and quiet? We bought this place 2 years back after Laura left federal service. Just a quiet slice of small-town America. A fixer-upper ranch house with enough space between neighbors to breathe. Turns out breathing's hard when your neighbor's Karen, and she's president of the local homeowner association. First 6 months, peaceful. Laura installed solar panels. I built a small workshop out back. We minded our own business. Then Karen showed up one day with a clipboard and a grin. "Those panels aren't regulation, and that structure's not HOA approved. I suggest you apply or take it down." Laura, being Laura, politely asked to see the actual HOA charter. Karen bristled, said it was on a private server. That was red flag number 1. We played along, for a while. But after 3 bogus fines and 2 warnings for unauthorized gardening, Laura pushed back, filed a formal complaint with the town's permit office. That's when Karen stopped smiling. Fast forward to last week. We got a knock at the door. A courier handed Laura a notice claiming she owed $4,570 in fines, threat of lien, no hearing, no recourse. Laura laughed, shook her head. "They're bluffing." But I could tell something had shifted. That night, she spent 3 hours at the kitchen table, flipping through folders. Not angry, focused. Like someone preparing for something she didn't want to do, but would finish if forced. Back to the truck. "She's impersonating an officer!" Karen yelled. "Arrest her!" Ramirez looked from Karen to Laura, then back to me. "Sir, what's going on here?" "She didn't impersonate anyone," I said. "She is who she says she is. She just doesn't advertise it." Karen wasn't having it. She marched up to Ramirez. "Are you going to let her threaten me in front of you? Are you?" Laura finally spoke, soft and deliberate. "Officer, if you want to check your own personnel file, page 2, bottom signature line, you'll see my name. I suggest you do that before this becomes a career problem." He backed off, pulled out his radio, moved to the side. Karen exploded. "Are you kidding me? You're taking her side? I am the president of this neighborhood." Laura stood still, the ties still on her wrists, but her eyes steady as stone. 5 minutes later, a second cruiser pulled up. Out stepped a woman in a gray blazer, short hair, no nonsense. She looked at Laura, then at Ramirez, then at me. "We'll sort this out," she said. "Ma'am, I believe we've met before." Laura nodded. "Tampa, 2 years ago. Advisory board." "Exactly," the woman said, then turned to Ramirez. "Cut her loose, now." Karen was still yelling when I helped Laura inside, and that's when she said the one thing that scared me more than anything else that day. "This won't be over, Mark. She's not done, and I'm tired." You ever see someone you love look like they've just had enough? Yeah, that was the look. And I knew right then I'd have to be the one to finish this. What would you do if someone tried to take down the strongest person you know? Stick around, because what happened next? Well, let's just say Karen should have read the fine print. Next morning, Laura was already gone. I found a note by the coffee pot. "At the courthouse. Don't wait up." That was all. 8 words that said more than an hour-long conversation ever could. That's Laura for you, straight to the point. But I could read between the lines. She was back in the fight, whether she wanted it or not. I sat on the porch, sipping bitter coffee, listening to the wind knock dry leaves across the gravel. Across the street, Karen's SUV sat, parked like a spider, waiting in the middle of its web. She was watching. I could feel it. You ever feel a storm coming even when the sky's clear? Let me tell you what happened next. Laura came back after sunset, exhausted, tossed a thick envelope on the table. That's the HOA's financials, what I could get anyway. Most of it's a mess. I opened it and scanned the pages, misfiled receipts, overlapping fines, payments sent from a personal account under Karen's name, then transferred into a neighborhood beautification fund. It smelled off, really off. I'm gonna need help, Laura said. Someone who knows how to read this stuff, someone not scared of Karen. I knew exactly who she meant. Meet Brenda, 71, retired bookkeeper, lived 2 houses down, never married, and meaner than a wet cat if you crossed her. But she had a soft spot for Laura, ever since Laura rewired her fuse box during a thunderstorm. I stopped by Brenda's that evening. She opened the door in her robe and stared at me like I'd broken curfew. If this is about that HOA nonsense, I already told your wife. Brenda, Karen just tried to have Laura arrested over fake fines. She paused. It's come in. 3 hours later, we had a system. Brenda took the financials. Laura compiled the official HOA bylaws. I handled logistics, scanning, printing, digging through old emails for anything Karen had sent over the years. By midnight, our living room looked like a war room, papers taped to walls, a timeline pinned to the mantel. You'd think we were tracking a serial killer, not a power-hungry suburban queen bee. The deeper we looked, the uglier it got. Turns out, Karen had been charging late fees for things not even covered in the official guidelines. She rerouted payments, faked approval letters, and in one case, fined a disabled veteran for unauthorized parking in his own driveway. Laura leaned back, eyes red. This isn't just abuse of power. This is theft. But here's the problem. We go public, she'll spin it. Make us look like bitter neighbors. We need something she can't wriggle out of. That's when Brenda, sipping her tea like a villain in a courtroom drama, said, "Find a signature she forged. 1. That's all it takes." The next day, Laura headed back to the permit office, while I visited the county records department. Brenda dug through her old HOA correspondence from years past. We were hunting for anything Karen submitted on behalf of the board, but without the board knowing. And we found it. One letter, dated 14 months ago, requesting a variance to fence regulations, signed by 3 board members. Only, one of them had moved out a month earlier, and another, deceased. "Gotcha," Brenda whispered. We scanned it, dated it, filed it. But Laura wasn't smiling. "This won't be enough," she said. "We bring this to court. We're playing her game, and she's been playing it longer." I frowned. "So what's the move?" Laura looked at me, tired but burning. "We make her show her hand, force her into a lie, a big public one." And just like that, the plan changed. We weren't going to report her. Not yet. We were going to bait her. You ever decide to walk straight into the lion's den just to see if the lion blinks? Stick around, because what we set in motion that week, it didn't just shake Karen, it cracked her whole empire. Saturday morning, Laura walked into the homeowner association meeting like she still had a badge on her hip. Hair tied back, clipboard in hand, calm as a sniper. I was right behind her, Brenda too. We weren't there to make noise. We were there to watch Karen make a mistake. That was the plan. Karen, of course, was already front and center, holding court like a queen on bingo night. The meeting was at the local rec center. Folding chairs, stale donuts, fake smiles. About 24 neighbors showed up, most out of boredom or free coffee. "Let's get started," Karen said into a mic like she was addressing Congress. "Item 1, enforcement of overdue fines. We've had serious violations." "Point of order," Laura interrupted. Karen froze, then smiled. "Mrs. Randolph, this isn't the time for interruptions." Laura took a step forward. "You've distributed a revised fine schedule not approved by the board. You've issued liens without hearings. You're acting outside the charter." Karen's nostrils flared. "You're not a board member. You don't have standing." Laura handed a packet to the person sitting nearest. "Then perhaps the community would like to review the actual charter. You've all been operating under revisions Karen never filed. You ever watch someone realize the room isn't with them anymore? Karen's smile started to wilt. People began flipping through the papers, whispering. Brenda handed out more copies. I stood in the back, watching faces shift from confusion to suspicion. Karen grabbed the mic again. This is a personal attack. These two have been targeting me for months. In fact, I have documentation. Laura cut in again. Then submit it, and submit the signatures for the last fence variance. The one signed by a dead man and a family that moved to Oregon. Gasps, actual gasps. Karen's face turned a shade I can only describe as burnt tomato. She fumbled through her folder. Here's what happened next. Karen waved a letter in the air. This was approved at the July board meeting. Brenda, cool as ice, asked, "Mind if we verify that? Meeting minutes are public, and I happen to have them here." She held up a binder, thick, dated, with color-coded tabs. Karen's voice shook. "This is harassment." Laura stepped closer. "Karen, we just want to clear things up. If everything's above board, great. If not, well, folks here deserve to know what's been going on with their dues." And then Karen did it. She doubled down. "This meeting is adjourned," she snapped. "Anyone distributing false information will be fined. I'm locking the HOA accounts for review. This conversation is over." She tried to leave, grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. But one of the neighbors, Rick, a soft-spoken guy who usually stayed out of things, stood up. "Karen, if that's true, why did my wife get a letter last month saying our landscaping violated rules that don't even exist in the charter?" Karen didn't answer, just kept walking. The room was quiet, and that's when the tide really turned. By Monday morning, half the neighborhood had called or dropped by our place. Not angry, curious, nervous, a few scared. They weren't ready for war, but they were done following blindly. Laura met them with coffee and calm. Brenda ran them through the finances. I listened, took names, kept records. Karen's grip was slipping, and fast. But here's the twist. She didn't fold. No, she came back twice as hard. Wednesday, we got a letter, certified, claiming Laura was under investigation for fraudulent impersonation of authority, and that she was officially banned from all HOA meetings until further notice. You ever get punched in the gut and laugh at the same time? Because Laura read the letter and laughed. But it wasn't a happy laugh. It was a tired, bitter, low kind of laugh. "She's scared," Laura said. "This is her bluff. But if we call it the wrong way, she'll bury us in complaints." She looked me dead in the eyes. "It's time to go dark." "What do you mean?" I asked. "No more meetings, no more public pushback. Let her think we're done. Meanwhile, we take the legs out from under her, quietly." And just like that, we disappeared from the spotlight. But behind the scenes, we were about to make the ground collapse beneath Karen's feet. You ever play dead just long enough for the snake to come closer? Stick around. This next part's where things get really personal. You'd be surprised how quiet a war can get when you're fighting it with paper cuts. We stopped going to meetings. No more confrontations, no more handouts. Karen thought she'd won. But what she didn't know was this. Laura and Brenda were working every night behind closed blinds, building a file thicker than a church Bible. Let me show you what happened next. Brenda had a contact in town hall, a clerk named Terrence, friendly guy, liked banana bread and hated paperwork. Turns out he'd been sitting on a pile of HOA filings Karen had dumped on him over the past 2 years. Most of them incomplete, some with, let's call it, creative math. One Wednesday afternoon, Brenda showed up at our door grinning like a raccoon with a sandwich. She claimed 3 separate landscaping grants, under 3 different project names, all for the same plot of land. I whistled. She double-dipped? Triple, Brenda said, and she forged the names of 2 neighbors to do it. Laura didn't even blink. We need a whistleblower, someone from the board, someone who signed those approvals. That's when I remembered Ron. Ron Patterson, mid-60s, wore the same faded fishing vest to every HOA cookout. Officially the HOA's vice chair of community development, which was a fancy way of saying he watered the entrance sign roses twice a month. I ran into him at the hardware store, made small talk, then hit him with it. "That Ron, you remember signing off on that Elmwood Garden beautification grant?" He scratched his head. "Elmwood what?" "Exactly." 2 days later, he met us at Brenda's, quiet, nervous, kept sipping from a styrofoam cup. She asked me to sign a cover sheet once, he said. Said the rest was just standard attachments. I didn't read it. Ron, Laura said gently, your name is on a document that awarded Karen $12,000 in discretionary funds. Twice. His face drained. I didn't know. He looked at me. I'm not in trouble, am I? No, I said, but she will be. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Laura didn't want to go to the police. Not yet. She wanted the state licensing board. The people who oversee nonprofit HOAs and handle violations that could pull their operating status. She called in a favor. Back when she worked federal, she'd taught a compliance seminar attended by a woman named Janine Morales. Janine now worked with the state licensing board. One encrypted email later, and we had a call scheduled. Laura walked her through everything. The fake grants, the forged signatures, the dead man on the fence variants. Janine's reply? Build a file, clean, chronological, with originals, then let me make a call. So that's what we did. For 2 straight weeks, we lived like investigators. Every morning, Laura was at the permit office or chasing down receipts. Brenda cataloged documents by date and type. I drove around collecting witness statements, neighbors who'd gotten bogus fines, threats, lien warnings. By the end of it, we had a box, a single battered banker's box. Inside it, Karen's entire kingdom. Now here's the part that still gives me chills. We never turned it in. Because right before we were ready to send it off, Laura said, I have a better idea. She pulled out a legal pad and scribbled something. A letter, she said, anonymous, to Karen, just 1 paragraph. Brenda raised an eyebrow. Threat? No, a promise. The next day we mailed it from the next county over. It read, Karen, a box exists. It contains every misstep, forged paper, and fraudulent grant you've filed since 2021. If anything happens to us, if even one more letter arrives at our door, one more false charge, one more cop, this box goes to the licensing board and the county auditor, and I promise you, they won't be as polite as we've been. No name, no return address, just facts. You ever watch a bully try to figure out if the ground under them is still real? For 3 days, nothing happened. Then on the 4th, Karen canceled the upcoming HOA meeting. No explanation. On the 5th, her SUV disappeared from the driveway. And on the 6th, she showed up on our porch, alone. What happened on that porch changed everything. Stick around, because this next part, this is where the masks come off. She didn't knock. Just stood there, Karen, on our porch, holding a folder like it might shield her from what was coming. Laura opened the door before I could. No words, just that tight, unreadable expression she gets when she's scanning a threat from the inside out. Karen cleared her throat. Can we talk? Laura didn't answer, just stepped aside. I watched her posture, shoulders relaxed, eyes sharp. She wasn't bracing for a fight. She was waiting for Karen to fold. Karen sat on the edge of the couch like she was afraid it might collapse. She opened the folder. Inside, 6 stapled pages, some typed, some handwritten. This is a formal retraction, she said, of the previous fine notices, and a letter clearing Laura of any alleged misconduct. I blinked. Karen kept talking, voice flat. And I've initiated a transfer of all HOA financial access to the board treasurer until further notice. Laura didn't even reach for the papers. Why now? Karen looked down. Because I don't want this to get any worse. No, Laura said, quiet but firm. Why now? After months of abuse, after lies, forged signatures, police calls, what changed? Karen's jaw clenched. Then something cracked. I got a call, she said, from a woman named Janine Morales. Said there were questions being raised about fiscal integrity, about grant disbursements. Laura nodded, didn't smile, just let the silence settle. Karen looked between us. I don't know what you think you're doing, but if you go through with this, it'll hurt everyone. Home values, community standing, we'll all suffer. Laura finally spoke. You mean you'll suffer? Karen flinched like she'd been slapped. You ever watch someone realize they're not the smartest person in the room for the first time? Karen stood. I'm offering a peace deal. Laura stayed seated. There's no war, Karen. Not anymore. We're not fighting you. We're just cleaning up. Karen paused at the door. You could destroy me. Laura looked up, calm, final. No, you already did that. We just gave you a mirror. And with that, Karen left. I expected Laura to collapse, cry, scream, something. But she just sat there, staring out the window. Was that it? I asked. She shook her head. No, that was the start of the end. That night, we opened the box, the one we'd filled with months of evidence. Laura pulled out 2 documents and placed them on the counter. Then she did something that shook me more than any of it. She pulled out a lighter. One by one, she burned the originals, kept only scanned copies. Why? I asked. Because we're not using them, she said. They're leverage, not a weapon, and I won't become her. You ever feel proud and terrified at the same time? I hugged her, held her close, but I could feel it, how much she'd lost, how much of her old self she'd had to dig up to win. Later that week, Brenda hosted a casual coffee for the neighbors. Informal, no agendas, just folks talking, sharing. Karen didn't show. No one mentioned her. But something had shifted. People laughed easier. Voices weren't hushed. Someone even brought banana bread. A few days later, Ron dropped off a box of garden tools with a note. I'm done watering her roses. That was it. Karen resigned 3 weeks later, officially cited health reasons. The board held a quiet vote. No one contested it. But the real ending? It came when Laura stepped down too, refused to take Karen's place, said, if I take power just because I fought for it, I've already lost. You ever see someone walk away from control just to stay free? Stick around. One final thing happened that brought it all full circle. And it wasn't what anyone expected. It was a month later when the knock came. Not a sheriff, not a neighbor, not even Karen. It was Ramirez. Yeah, that Ramirez, the officer who zip-tied my wife to the hood of our truck like she was a wanted felon. I opened the door, and there he stood, no badge. Just jeans, a gray polo, and a look that said this wasn't official. Mr. Randolph, he said, is Laura home? She's in the garden, I said. Why? He hesitated. I owe her an apology. Let me tell you something. Remorse is rare, real remorse. Most people avoid it, cover it up, pretend it didn't happen. But this kid, he stood there and took it. Laura came up the path, holding a pair of gloves, dirt on her hands, a smudge on her cheek. She stopped cold when she saw him. He looked down. Ma'am, I reviewed my footage from that day. I looked up your credentials, and I realized I didn't just make a mistake. I embarrassed myself. I let someone manipulate me. Laura didn't answer, just waited. He kept going. I've submitted my resignation. I'm going back to school. Law? Laura blinked. Law? He gave a sheepish nod. I figured if I'm going to enforce rules, I should at least understand them. That's when Laura did something I didn't expect. She stepped forward and shook his hand. Then make sure you remember what this felt like, she said. Being wrong, it's how good people stay good. He nodded, then walked off. We didn't say anything for a while. Later, sitting on the porch, Laura finally spoke. You know what scares me the most? I looked at her. That I almost became her, she said. Digging, storing ammo, plotting. I was halfway down the same hole. You didn't, I said. But I could have. She looked out across the lawn. The grass had grown back where the HOA had once staked that ugly sign, the one with the rules in bold red. Now, nothing but sunlight and quiet. Do you regret fighting? I asked. No, she said, but I regret letting it get personal. I didn't fight to make things right. I fought to win. That's the difference. You ever realize you won the war but lost a little of yourself in the process? That was Laura's reckoning. And me? I'd watch the strongest woman I know walk through fire, not to destroy someone else, but to make sure she didn't lose who she was. People still talk, of course. Karen's name gets whispered sometimes. New board president's a quiet guy named Lee who hosts cookouts instead of issuing fines. The signs got replaced with flowers. No more threats, no more letters.